too, is like, what do you see in founders who are winners or losers?
One element of being a great founder, and we're talking about people that can not just start a small company, but one that can grow it into a much bigger company. One element is salesmanship. And it's not something that you hear a lot of people talk about, but in order to grow a company to a very large size, obviously you have to sell customers, but you also have to sell employees, and you have to sell partnerships, and you have to sell incremental investors, and you're just out, and you own the brand of the company, which you're likely promoting ad nauseum. And if you're not good at that, it'll be very difficult to outrun the other company, that may be competing for that. So that's one. It took me probably my entire 25 years to come to terms with this, but I think you really need to be great at product. Like you just have to be. And I used to try and convince myself that wasn't true. And I learned the lesson the hard way a couple of times. And the really great founders have this instinct, not just for the best practices for products today, but where those are going to go when the new technologies allow them to shift to the next place. And that really matters. Many great startups have a go-to-market advantage. They've figured out some hack to get to customers faster. And so that's another element that could be important. And then I borrowed this one from Jeff Bezos. I asked him once, how in the world do you do so many amazing angel investments while you're running Amazon? And he said, I only look for one thing, which is that this person's going to go do this thing they claim they want to go do come hell or high water. Like whether I'm involved or not, like this kind of determinism that's unbridled. Like it's just, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing this. And he has a way of sensing that. So that's another good tip, perhaps.
Do you have a way of sensing if somebody is just going to stay in it until they either do it or they break them?
There's a couple of things you can look for. Like, did they fall into it opportunistically? Because then it might not be there, and some people, I remember when we did the first Uber investment, Travis, his first couple of companies, one of them I think ended up in bankruptcy. The other one, they got money back, but it was pretty obvious he hadn't touched the brass ring and really, really, really wanted to. And he could sense that this thing was going to work like way bigger than the first two he was on. And I could just tell he wasn't going to not lean in as hard as he possibly could. You could feel it.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a founder. I won't say his name, but he's a stud. But he now has a company. It's worth multiple $1 billion. And we jokingly say he's either going to be a trillionaire or he's going to go to prison. Because
he's so determined.
Yeah, there's just no way. And
Josh Wolf of Lux Capital has a saying: "Chips on shoulders, put chips in pockets."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Just this, and that it's a little bit of a pivot from the unbridled determinism, but kind of this the chip on a shoulder thing is another example of that determinism. Like, I got something to prove. I really have something to prove.
Yeah. What is the opposite of this? Like, you had a blog post I love.
And by the way, a lot of that stuff I mentioned, nowhere in there did I mention the idea, or the specific business. And we've seen incredible businesses be built by great founders who have pivoted 180 degrees from the original idea.
Yeah.
Discord's that way, for example. And Slack was famously that way. So the person matters more than the concept.
How did they know when to give up on Discord, for answer? How do you know when to give up on an idea?
I think you can reach a point where none of the math works. The team that built Nextdoor originally had built a website for sports enthusiasts, and it was out there. It had 1 million users, but based on ad rates and everything and the growth rate, it needed to be 100x bigger, and that looked impossible. And you tilt and tilt and tilt and tilt. Yeah.
So you don't want to get tied to the idea. You want to get tied to an outcome, like
I was fortunate to be at a place at Benchmark Capital where we were, and they still are, competing to be the best in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the game's a little different at that level because you're looking for the grand slam home run outcomes. And you're not, it's not a game of IRR. It's not a game of, it's more like a mid-market PE where you need, you can only have one failure. The winners are so big at that level, you could have 80% of your portfolio fail. So it's a game that's a lot riskier and you're searching for the really big outcomes. So some of the decision making's different.
Yeah, it's really important to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to have, because most people don't want that life. Most people actually want, and I imagine it's pretty miserable. I mean, we run a couple pretty big companies from our standards, and it ain't easy.
I've shared two thoughts with founders that relate to what you're saying. One, I had the unfortunate position of telling founders when they achieve some level of success that it only gets harder going up, and like it just keeps getting harder. And if you think growing $100 million company is hard, try growing $1 billion company. And the expectations go up, and the number of people whose livelihood are counting on you, the employee base goes up, and it just gets harder. And the only solace I have for them is I always tell them, if you're going to look up the ladder, make sure you look down the ladder. It's just like, make sure you celebrate how far you've moved. Because I talk to a lot of people who are probably in the top 2 percentile of all startups, and they're pretty stressed about not being, above themselves. And the other thing I tell a lot of founders, which I think may really relate with your audience, is, venture capital, it may not be a good fit for your business. And very oftentimes in venture capital, especially if you're partnering with a firm like I just described, where they're trying to have these massive outcomes, a Series A quickly becomes a Series B, quickly becomes a Series C. And before you know it, the founder's equity is down around 10% or lower. And, if you can self-fund your business, you can exit at $30 to $50 million and make lifetime wealth. But if you start down this path and get down to 10%, you now need to sell for $500 million to get that same outcome, which is a lot harder to achieve. And so, just make sure that that's what you need, and make sure that that's what you want. I actually think that there are far more companies that want to do tuck-in $30 to $50 million acquisitions than want to do $500 million. Like it's probably 100x easier to get that type of deal done.
It's a really good point. You kind of have had this history of saying some of the hard things that's not consensus in VC continuously.
Yeah.
I was going through your old blog that, you've had for 30 years, last couple of years, maybe a little bit less, but there were
definitely less.
there were like two blog posts I really, really loved. And one I remember when it came out was, it was actually about red flags in companies. And it came out like 2 weeks after FTX, basically. So it was like incredible timing. And you basically talked about all the reasons why. And I had I have a quote in here from it that I just want to read. It was, I have over 40 years of legal and restructuring experience, never in my career seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. And so what I would love to know from you is what are the biggest red flags in business? And what did you see in that deal that you were like, guys, how did you miss this?
Well, by the way, it's tricky because I just told you that there are firms out there that want to find the biggest grand slam home runs they possibly can. And so the best way to make sure you have exposure to as many of those as you can is to be and look as founder friendly as you possibly can. And so if you combine hyper competition at the investor level, from the time I entered the venture career to the time I left, competition only went in one direction. It increased, and it's more competitive today than ever. And if you have that hyper competition, and if the best way to ingratiate yourself to a founder and potentially get a new deal is to be as friendly as possible, you create a scenario where this is very likely to happen, super likely to happen. And so I don't know that there's a way around it because the option is like, I think that the competitive level is so high that you're going to test this boundary constantly. Like you're just going to test the boundary. And some of the best founders are very determined. We use the word deterministic and aren't looking for constraints. And so it's kind of ripe for this to happen, you know.
That's true.
But it gets rationalized, you know. And so I was actually at a dinner with some of the FTX investors about 2 months before it blew up. And I said, and I asked all the questions that are in the red flags, and they were aware of all of those risks. But, you know, didn't have a way to manage it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, on the other end of the spectrum.
But it's okay. I mean, look, it's you know, everyone's wearing their, what would you say, big boy underwear in this game. And so,
you hope.
not to, I hope that's not gender bias, but like, this is one of the reasons why there's a number of people that want to push to have everyday retail investors be able to invest in these types of companies. And this is one of the reasons why I'm somewhat like cynical about that idea, because the people that are doing this kind of know the risks they're taking, but I'm not sure that everyone would understand, including the failure rate issue. You know, these pass the hat SPVs that are happening everywhere, special purpose vehicles. You're probably aware of this. Like people are going to get burned. Like,
yeah. Well, why don't you explain a special purpose vehicle and how somebody might say they invested in SpaceX, but you know, ridiculous fees and at a wild valuation.
So let me back up just a minute, because I think it's important to frame it. In a venture capital fund, so this is a fund that limited partners are going to invest in, which are traditionally university endowments, fellowships, that kind of thing, foundations. That venture capital firm will have an agreement with these investors that includes something called a look back. And what the look back says is, if you take money from the first 3 winners and then don't return anything else, a bunch of losers, you owe us back what was in those losers. So there's an investment agreement that kind of looks at the fund and the portfolio holistically. An SPV, special purpose vehicle, is when a investor is representing a group of other investors for a single investment, and it doesn't have a look back and there's no portfolio. And so they'll take fees, not always, but sometimes they'll take management fees and a rake, some form of carry, on this single investment. And if any VC could strike a deal with their LPs where every single investment was a SPV, they would do it. But they don't do it. And that's kind of the point. And there's a concept in gambling in Vegas called a free roll. And I often think about, from the GP's perspective, the person underwriting the SPV, the one trying to talk you into investing in it, I think they got a free roll. Because if it works, they make money. If it doesn't work and they got fees, they still make money. And they got nothing in it. Like, you know, and so the only way I would ever consider an SPV is if the underwriter is putting 50% of the money in or more, but they're probably not at all. And so, and these have become particularly popular in the last year or two. And I would just, like, it's funny, this whole AI thing, like the ups and downs that have happened, the funny thing is the best bet all along has just been the index, like the S&P index, because you were exposed to AI because NVIDIA became such a large part of it.
Or now Apple with hardware.
Yeah, you had all these big companies that were already overweighted in the index that were AI exposed. And here now, where we have the fear of AI starting to cause valuations to crumble, the S&P has performed pretty well. And if you're sitting there holding a basket of like high tech new companies, you got wiped out in the past 3 months.
I was looking at the numbers like a couple days ago, and, we've seen massive January layoffs. We've seen like some of the worst jobs numbers since 2009. We've seen like decreasing non-farm payroll numbers since basically 2022. We've seen like, decrease in overall job creation in the US.
Yeah.
And so I think people right now are saying, oh my God,
They are.
Forget doing what I want for a living. Am I going to have a job?
Yes.
And you have such a history with these tech companies. Like, one, I guess I would say, how could somebody find a career right now that is safe? Is there a way even?
So if you look before AI, there was a Gallup poll in 2023, and it's only 23% of people identified as engaging and satisfied at work. 59% did not. And the other 19 are like actively unhappy at work. And I think that's interesting, and I look at what we've done with the traditional career path, and we've created this conveyor belt from, it starts really early. I think it starts about 6th grade, where parents start worrying about their kids' college application. And Jonathan Haidt calls it the resume arms race. And we just start packing it full of extra credit classes and cello lessons and lacrosse lessons and all this stuff. And, when I was younger, like, our parents would let us like roam the city for days and not know where we were. It was just a totally different time. But these kids are so pushed into this pressure cooker. And then they get into college and then you got to get a job. And I think well-intentioned parents are pushing kids towards these safe jobs. And I've raised 3 children, and I can tell you the intuition to do that is really strong. Mm-hmm. It's just like built into your DNA. I don't think it's no malintent whatsoever. You just want them to be okay. You want them to be fine. And so over the past 30 years, that's been, make them a banker, make them a computer scientist, make them a consultant. And these jobs happen to be under AI threat. But I think people weren't happy before that. And I'd like to, if you'd allow me, because I think the AI thing is super interesting, I'd like to juxtapose 2 things for you. One, if you are accepting this kind of conveyor belt process where you're going to go exactly in line with how you're told, how everybody else is doing it. You're going to go be a computer scientist at the best school. You're going to interview with the companies that come there. So you're you're doing what you're told, and you're following where they've told you to go. I think those people, AI is a huge threat, because they're like, they don't really know why they're there. They just showed up and they were told to do this, and there's 100 other people around them that look just like them, and they're all interviewing for the same job, and they're not differentiated, and it's scary as all get out. Now, I want to juxtapose that with, let's say you're somebody that has an immense passion for something that's very bespoke, where they're out running in their own lane and trying to chart their own course. For that individual, is AI a threat or is it a jetpack? I actually think it's a jetpack, because now I can go learn about anything I want. I can go study about anything I want. It's never been easier to learn faster because of this tool called AI. I can build things with less people. I can write code. I can do videos. And so if you're your own champion and you're in your own lane, I think AI is a superpower. But it's an interesting juxtaposition, right? Like, is it a threat or is it a help? And I think it's kind of dependent on the game you're playing.
I actually haven't thought about it that way, but it makes all the sense in the world. You can almost feel the people who are excited by AI because they want to practically apply it right now, immediately to something.
Yeah.
And the people who just think, oh, Lord, I used to do X task. Now somebody else is going to do the task.
Right. There's a funny story that I think is relevant, which I think it was Bjorn Borg. There was a tennis player who retired very early. I think it was Bjorn Borg. And when he retired was the kind of final years of the wooden tennis racket. And he decided to make a comeback. I hope it was him. I hope I got the name right. And about 5 years later, and everyone had switched to these big graphite rackets, and he refused to use one because he was used to the tool he had, and he got obliterated. Like, wasn't even close. And, there are many anthropologists that have studied the fact that humans evolve with their tools. And so you could, who's more fit, someone in Naked and Afraid, or someone, with a bulldozer and a calculator and a computer. Like, it's pretty obvious, right? And this tool has come along very quickly, AI, and it has capabilities that really matter to make a human more fit, more kind of evolutionarily fit. And if you don't lean into it and figure out how it can most impact the career you're in, you're more likely to be susceptible to being displaced.
Yeah.
Like, the best anecdote is to run at it, like to play with it all the time.
Yeah. I liked that line you have. I think you had a line basically like that, like, you have to become the most aggressive user of AI in your field, run at it, because that's how you keep evolving.
No doubt.
Which I love. Well, so
and by the way, that'll be true of the next disruptive technology as well.
This doesn't feel like you've seen every technology that, has probably felt this way to the masses over the last 30 years. Does this feel different to you?
It feels a little different, I think, because it threatens white collar workers so fast. Like, I think a lot of the waves before, so, you go way back to just automation in factories and the agriculture, what happened to agriculture with the rise of machines. And look, I think in the U.S. used to be 98% agriculture at the top, and it's like less than 2% now. So we've survived these things, like, they happen. But this one's unique, I think. And that's why it's created so much anxiety.
I love Bill's takes on how to find our best careers, because I just read this crazy statistic that by 2030, up to 30% of current jobs could be automated. McKinsey says as many as 375 million workers may need to switch occupations. And Goldman says AI could impact 300 million full-time roles. Here's what no one wants to admit. It's not the robots that win, it's the owners of attention. So when distribution gets automated, when content gets generated, when noise goes infinite, the scarce asset isn't actually skill, it's taste and audience. If you don't own your audience, you rent your income, and rent goes up. That's why I've been thinking a lot about email lately. Not the boring kind, the kind that turns ideas into movements, which brings me to something I've been using behind the scenes, Beehive. Beehive is this all-in-one platform for building, growing, making money on your newsletter. But here's what actually matters. It's built for people who already create. So you can publish, you can grow with built-in referral tools and recommendations, you can monetize from day one, like ads, subscriptions, boosts, without stitching together 5 different tools. You own the audience. No algorithms deciding whether your work gets seen and whether those closest to you actually hear from you. Solo creators are turning newsletters into 6- and 7-figure businesses. I turned mine into, some ways you could say, a 9-figure business. If AI is going to commoditize content, then the move is obvious. Build a list. Own the relationship. If you're already creating, or you should be, you can actually go to beehive.com. I asked them for a code for us. It's BEEHIIV.com. And then you can use code CODIE30 for 30% off for 3 months. I don't think we should wait for the future. We should own something.
What are the skills you need to have to win in the age of AI in your mind?
Immense curiosity, because you have to play with this thing. And, you've got to get over the skepticism. I've met some really intelligent people. Some of the top academics that I happen to have relationships with, who are just doubters. They get it to hallucinate once, and then they run around and tell everybody about how it gave them the wrong answer. And boy, that's dangerous. Like, it's just so dangerous to walk around being skeptical in that way.
Yeah.
I think it's far too powerful to be that way. But I see it. I see it a lot.
Yeah, Greg Brockman, I think, had a tweet today that I liked, which just said that, like, taste is now a real skill. And I feel that a little bit. I saw this graph. I should have brought it for you that I thought was really good. But it was basically like a little, fourplex. And in the bottom, it was like bad judgment, good judgment, and then non-AI use, AI use, or high AI use. And and then it said basically, if you have bad judgment and AI use, slop cannon, you create a lot of really bad things. Good judgment, lot of AI use, sort of superhuman, you know, you create incredible things. And I've been thinking about that lately because I felt it. We did this job posting, Bill, and I was like, we're hiring sort of vibe coders. We're hiring them in every single department. We're hiring engineers as well, but we already have engineers that we've been hiring. I've never hired this person. It's just like AI curious. And we get thousands of applications for it, right? But then as I'm going through it, I'm like, wow, people have built a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is a questionable choice of what you are building and how and why. And that product is actually really terrible from a UI perspective, right? Yeah. So I'd be curious for you, like in this world, it does seem like you have to really have taste about what you build and why too. Do you think that's true? And if so, how do you tell if somebody has it or not?
Yeah, I mean, it may be that both relationships and taste become even more important because of the volume of information that can be created could create more noise. One thing I would really tell people, and you've probably been down this path yourself, but like the more you use AI, the more you understand and intuitively have a feel for what it's capable of. And then the more you push it and into places you might not have thought about before. Yeah. And I'm surprised. I was surprised yesterday, like, oh, wow. It figured that out. Yeah. And if you're not playing with it every day, not only do you not know what it's capable of, but you're not developing your skills to get it to be as good as it can possibly be for you. Like there is an element, people use the phrase prompt engineering before, but I think it's more than that. I think it's having awareness of when it might help you and knowing you can go to it more often.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess it's almost like you'll see an expert with all the ways they know how to utilize a tool, any type of tool.
No doubt. And the stuff that came out in the past 2 weeks, which I haven't played with yet, or even more of that.
That's my existential
I haven't
drag.
built a claw bite yet, but probably should.
My president just did, and he came in wild-eyed yesterday. He's like, I've been working on it for the 4th day. I didn't sleep last night. I'm like,
I love that.
But me too. And you know what?
That.
He's the former president of Mr. Beast. He's a super successful guy. He makes a ton of money. He's built a lot of companies. Yeah. And yet even he is so curious about what's happening.
Yeah, and you were asking about the elements of a great founder, like that part's in there. They can't stand, they have immense FOMO about new technologies. That's
a great line. Chris Sacca had said something really interesting about you, totally off the AI subject. But Chris Sacca said that when you are in a meeting, you will be sitting there silent for most of the meeting. And then you'll say like 10 poignant words that will change the trajectory of the entire meeting. And you're a humble guy and you didn't even want to write like a memoir. You wanted to write something to help people. So I'm sure you hear that quote and you're like, whatever, Chris. But
no, that's not my reaction. Go ahead and finish the question.
But my question is like, you're in rooms with these power players all over the world. You're in rooms with other big investors, all your partners at Benchmark. How do you make your words count? How do you get heard by people?
By the way, that thing Chris described is a evolved skill, not something that came naturally. And if you read, the stories of the elders, the great early venture capitalists, you'll find a mention of that precise technique. And I probably read those early on, and it's hard. Like it's super hard. Like the human wants to blurt out the best answer first. And there's this sales tool, Gong, that they use to record salespeople. And then I wish every board meeting had a Gong recorder and then immediately posted a pie chart of who talked the most. I wish. I've never said that out loud before.
That's a great feature.
But I would love to see that because I think it would encourage more people to do what you just described. And it's super effective. It's just very hard to do. It's very hard to bite your tongue. And the other benefit of waiting till the end is you're going to have more information. You're going to synthesize, while you prepare to say what you're going to say. And it's going to be more efficient, obviously, if you say less. It turns out it's also more impactful for the reasons you just described.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Rick Rubin before we started.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with this one line of his, which is that he is not a producer, he's a reducer.
Yeah.
He's always trying to get it down to the core.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of you in this way in meetings. And I know you said you spent time with Rick. What did you take away from him? Was there a story that you were like, God, this is so good, I want to go home and tell my wife?
I was kind of on pins and needles going in, because I hold Rick in this really special place in my brain because of how unique an individual he is and how different he is. And I'm a huge music fan, and all the different genres he's touched and made magic with. It's clear there's something special there. And then you read his book; it's not written like any other book that's ever been written. It's Yoda-esque. It's really small words put together that are profound, but not obvious in how to interpret. And, some people have told me they've read Rick's book like a fourth time. Like, I think it may need that, like, to soak in. So I was so thrilled to be there. And, I'd watched the documentary about the studio. There's a 4-part documentary. And so just being there was, super special to me. Yeah. And I was so in awe. Maybe the whole thing felt like the answer to your question was every single second of being around him. I'm that much of a fanboy, but it was great. He was so prepared. When I was writing the book, I was very curious why I did the podcast, because here's a guy that's remarkably successful in his field, probably arguably the best of all time, but certainly top 5 producer of all time. And he does a podcast, not just with music people or even Hollywood. It's much broader than that. And I remember listening to him talk to Jay Bhattacharya, and I'm like, this is insane. Like this is amazing. And I asked him, why do you do it? And he said, it's all about curiosity, like just scratching itches and learning as a hobby. And I think that's profound. Like, I really do. I think that the best and the brightest, there's a recent podcast, I forget who did it with him, with Toby of Shopify. And if Toby talks, anywhere publicly, I consume it within 24 hours. I just find him so wonderful and so fascinating. And in this particular one, someone asked him, like, what's the easiest life hack of all? And he said, read. Like, read. Like, don't stop reading. He goes, people write down stuff that they've learned over a lifetime, and you can consume it in a day. Like, that's so easy. You should do it all the time. And Buffett has said similar things. It's profound. The learning tools are unlike they've ever been. And that's why I go back to what I said earlier. If you're on a self-directed path, where you're trying to be, I have a phrase in the book, a candidate of one, where you want to look like a individual, and how you know the lane you're in, where you're headed toward, and you want to add to yourself more learning about where you're headed. There's never been a better time. Like, in the history of the world, there's never been a better time. It is, it's insane, the opportunity that's out there for you.
Well, I loved a lot of what you said in the book about finding mentors. So that's a question, if anybody who's on the internet a lot, people ask, how do you find mentors? It's a big question. I've actually never thought about it. Have you ever called anybody your mentor?
Yes. Did
you ask them? Were they like, were you like, will you be my mentor?
No, I don't think it went down in that way. I didn't say, will you be my mentor?
Is that a good question to ask? Should somebody ask somebody?
Probably not. Like, I don't think you should use it. It's a very heavy sounding ask, I think. And so, I'll give your listeners a cheat. I still hope they buy the book, but I'll give them, like, my first thing on mentors is, take the people overshoot. They try and go too high. And so I think it's awesome to identify the people in the field you're going to go after that you hold in highest regard and respect the most. Call those your aspirational mentors. Create a file, in whatever digital folder type thing you like to use, Notion or Google Docs or whatever. Create a file for each one of them and study them relentlessly. Find every podcast they've been on, find every YouTube, any interview you can find, anything they've written, put it in that file. Like keep it like a little journal of yours for each one of them. One day you may meet them, and the fact that you've done all that work will make you much more likely to be able to engage with them. But you're going to learn so much along that way. So the ones you thought you were going to cold call, don't do that. Do what I just said. And then for the ones you're going to actually try and meet, just go down a few levels. Like if you go down a few levels, you're going to be asking someone for advice that's never been asked for advice before. And they're going to be flattered that you're doing it, that you know who they are, that you found who they were, and that you respect what they've achieved. You're going to be the first person that's asked them that. And because of that, they're going to be responsive. And so people overshoot. That's a great way to kind of divide the world into two parts. And one day, who knows, when the first profile in my book is Danny Meyer, who's a close personal friend and one of the most wonderful humans I've ever met. For those that don't know, Danny's one of the top restaurateurs in New York, maybe the top, most people would say. And he created Shake Shack. That's how most listeners would probably know him. But when Danny decided, and he had this intent, and it was in a single moment at a dinner one night, to go be a restaurateur, he made a list of the 10 people he respected most that were changing the restaurant industry. And he did exactly what I said. He studied them. He kept a folder on them. And when I was preparing to give the talk at the University of Texas that was the precursor to this book, I called Danny because I just thought about this before I was about to go give this speech. I said, "Did you ever meet any of those 10 people?" And he sent me the 100 emoji. So he ended up meeting all of them, yep. Which is awesome, right? And as someone who climbed the ladder in their field, I will tell you, like, meeting or perhaps even impressing those people that you put on that initial list is a truly amazing, fulfilling life experience. Like, it's really cool when that happens,
It's incredible advice, and I don't think it's given enough.
Yeah. I have this other thing in the book that I feel compelled to share that gives me goosebumps the first time I saw it. When Anthony Hopkins watched Breaking Bad, he sent Bryan Cranston this letter about how impressed he was. And I don't know if enough people do that enough, but I can't imagine that any Oscar or Emmy felt as good as getting that letter from Sir Anthony Hopkins. You know what I'm saying?
It's a great point.
It just, the weight that must carry to have someone at the top of your field tell you that you did something amazing. And it costs nothing, right? So
no, but it's so important, because I think these days, like, what I see a lot of people doing is everybody, when they try to get mentors, they go really wide. They try to go talk to everybody who's famous or well-known or at the top of the game, but they're really narrow in what they know about them. And you're saying, do the opposite, go really deep with few. And then on top of that, it's kind of like job searching. It's like, try to go get every job in the world, apply 1,000 times. You see that on X, they'll say, well, I've been out of a job for 6 months and I've applied to, 1,000 places. But it seems to me like going deeper and more sniper rifle as opposed to shotgun works better in most things in life. And you could even I loved the story you told about Bob Dylan and his mentor even, and what he did to track down one guy. And this is Bob Dylan. Like, if Bob Dylan has to do it, what do we have to do?
Yeah. And by the way, this is another area where, like, if you're playing around with AI, you're going to learn, like, everything it's capable of. And if you're meeting any human and you haven't done a pro, search of everything that's possibly out there on them, so you can know as much about them before you meet them, you're just not doing it right.
It's true. But you know what's crazy? Don't you find most people still don't?
Yeah, I think most people don't. But I think that in the future, you will, listen to a podcast on your way to work where your AI is telling you everything you possibly need to know about everyone you're going to meet that day. I think that that certainly will happen.
I talk a lot about owning stuff, businesses, assets, your time, but owning your privacy matters too. So right now, your personal info is being bought and sold online without you ever opting in. Old addresses, family names, phone numbers, it's all floating around. That's not great, especially if you're building something or simply don't want random people knowing where you live. That's why I like Incogni. They reach out to data brokers and get your personal info removed, and they keep doing it because new sites pop up all the time. It's super simple. You sign up, you say what you want removed, they take care of it. And if there's something specific you want off the internet, custom removals covers that too. My rule is pretty simple. If I wouldn't give it to a stranger, I don't want it online. They can't harm you if they can't find you. So check it out at incogni.com/bigdeal.
I want some Bill Gurley predictions. Like, what do we think? What do you think? What are some crazy, spiky predictions you have for the next year or two about tech and just the world?
I think this, I think everyone is finally now, I think Clawbot actually helped finally push us towards this, this kind of personal assistant concept, this AI thing that's like your running buddy that I really think most people want, you know, and there's all kind of questions about privacy and how much you share and whether that gets shared beyond, like, I get it. Like, but I think people are going to want this so bad. You know, I missed it. I was late to a meeting yesterday because I tried to call like 3 or 4 people and they said, "Oh, today's a holiday." And so I just got lulled into thinking there was nothing on my calendar. And then I was late to this thing, and I was thinking this morning, like, someone should have started pinging any channel I have, you know, especially like if I'm not moving, like someone should know if I'm not moving, I'm going to be late to this thing. Like, and it could ping me and tell me, and it will. Like that's coming. Like that's going to happen. Like for sure.
I totally agree. Okay, so we're gonna have relentless little AI reminders and assistants.
I think so.
What else do you think?
I mean, it's so hard to see the future right now because of everything's possible and anything's possible, and you know. I think there will be vertical models that get really good in very specific places. Health. I mean, the ones people are leaning on the hardest are legal and health and coding right now. But I think it'll happen in many, many, many fields as people figure out what's capable, what's possible. You know, I think fixing certain industries will not go as fast as you would want because of things like regulatory capture that make it very hard for innovation to thrive. Healthcare is a good example of that.
What else do you think that other people might disagree with you about? What else do you like? I
can give
disagree.
you an easy one on that. There's a competitive dynamic in China right now on AI models that includes open source. And I don't think the world, especially the politicians, understand how like unbelievably powerful open source is as a weapon, like as a competitive weapon. And if you have 10 companies all doing open source, the minute an idea is shared, it's available to the other 10. And they absorb it immediately. And it just creates this dynamic that's hyper competitive. It doesn't mean, when I say it's hyper competitive, that also means it's less likely to create wealth because, but it's a form. There's a phrase in economics called pure competition that you can look up on Wikipedia or whatever, and you'll study it if you get a finance degree. But in pure competition, no one has an edge. Marginal cost moves to marginal price. It's great for consumers. Consumers end up with the lowest price point. And some would argue it's the ideal goal of capitalism, you know, to get the lowest price to the lowest, you know, for the consumer, and prosperity thrives. I actually agree with that. But open source is hyper competitive compared to a situation where people are only playing with proprietary models. And so, you know, people say we're 6 months ahead or 3 months ahead. I think the odds that, you know, the U.S. with 2 proprietary models can stay ahead of China with 10 open source ones is very low.
Fascinating. So what do we do about that?
Well, here's what I fear we're going to do about it is, this is really off the subject, but what I fear we're going to do is the two leading players will recognize the threat and weaponize regulation, which is what they started doing 3 years ago. But no one's funding more lobbyists begging for AI regulation than Anthropic themselves, and they'll use that to try and deal with the threat. What's really going to be interesting is the rest of the world. So for the past 100 years, I think the U.S. has considered rest of the world their market. And that's true in industrial type products, but it's certainly true in technology. And if you look at the internet, China kind of had a fence around it, and the rest of the world used the U.S. products. They used Google and Amazon and Uber and, all these things. And if we pull up this huge regulatory wall, it may be the U.S. that has the fence around it this time. It's going to be really interesting. Copyright's a super fascinating thing. Like if the Chinese models don't protect copyright and the U.S. ones are forced to, what does the rest of the world do? Do we go to the EU and say, you can't use Chinese models, they don't respect copyright? And how will the EU respond? I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I did see some of your tweets on even IP and, no patents, no copyrights, and how in some ways that would be better for the world.
I think it would be. This is very controversial, by the way, but I do.
Well, explain why it's controversial. And even you could steel man it. Like Walt Disney would be like, hey, Bill, fuck you.
Yeah. I think copyright lands harder in people's brain because they think about it as an artist, individual creativity, and that hits people emotionally.
Yep.
Patents, in the U.S. have been systematically abused, and you could just go talk to AI about it. How do, pharma companies use rolling innovation to extend patent life, way beyond what the original intent was? And it happens constantly. And people will say, oh, but if you don't have patents, you won't have innovation. And I just don't believe it. Partially because, our firm was lucky enough to be an investor in Red Hat. So we've been investing in open source companies for 25 years. And, there are plenty of people who want to innovate who don't need the government protecting their innovation. Tesla has famously open sourced all their patents, as an example. And I'm fairly certain that Elon agrees with me on this point, but we may be, I think we're two pretty lone wolves on this topic. But
what about name and likeness and, that in the age of AI, because so much of AI is just trained on art, let's say.
Look, I recognize the copyright thing, really gets people's skin up. And I would just say, a 17-year patent is way too far. We need to dial it back. I think that we will innovate faster without it. But the other way you get there is hyper competition that pushes you to open source. And it's fascinating. I visited China in August, and I was doing research for that trip, and I went back, and the previous 5-year plan, China notoriously publishes these 5-year plans that are pushed to the provinces to encourage them. Here's the things that the higher ups are interested in. And open source was in the one 5 years ago. I think that China has been accused of being a IP thief for a long time. So it's very natural that they would see open source as a great place to run towards. And they have. And I think people may be making a mistake in not understanding why that might actually be the right perspective for a country to want to embrace.
Yeah. You told a story that I thought was fascinating about.
And by the way, I think you end up in a better position globally from a competitive standpoint, because that hyper innovation that comes from all those open source sharing just moves your products faster forward. And I'm not convinced, we're getting into really esoteric concepts.
That's good.
I'm not convinced that having large market cap companies is necessarily a massive advantage,
Yeah. Well, I think that's,
And it could be a sign of monopoly, right? Which,
I think that's very reasonable.
yeah.
Well, I have a question on that. Like, one of the things that I love in your book and what you've talked about, and really some of the ethos in Silicon Valley is like collaboration instead of competition.
Yeah.
So like I come from a private equity background where, we just steamrolled everybody and we competed with everybody. And it was a lot of zero-sum games. I buy this company or you buy this company and you lose if I win.
Yeah.
And then I had to lose that sort of when we started investing in venture. And I definitely had to lose that when I got on the internet because it's I've realized collaboration works a lot more.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, you're still a competitive guy. Like you're a former, basketball player. Yeah. You're competing in deals. So like, should you try to crush your competition or should you work with them?
Well, the advice in the book, most of it that gets into this topic you're hitting on is in a chapter called Embrace Your Peers. And it's probably my favorite principle in the book, but mainly because I think it's the most unique of all the points that I make. And I found some amazing stories that I share in the book that you can go read. But like I found that far too often humans, and I'm not talking about companies, I'm not saying companies need to have friends, but like they probably do. But humans, when they're out trying to climb up the ladder, would do themselves a massive advantage if they would embrace a group of peers. So finding 5 to 10 other people who are climbing the same ladder you are and share, collaborate, and support one another. And you learn faster. Your network is bigger because it's not just your network; it's the group's network. If it's authentic, they will be there for you on the hard days, and that will really matter. Like that will really, really matter. Like in ways that's if you haven't been through it, it's really hard to say how big a deal that is. And you'll have fun, and one way to know if you're really doing it right, when they win, you're sincerely happy for them. Like you really are. And if you can get in touch with that emotion, your odds of success are going to go way up, but I think you're going to enjoy the journey a lot more too. I really do. And in most fields, like not downhill ski racing, but in every other field, there are a lot of winners. There just are a lot of winners. You're not supporting this other person isn't crowding out a position for you. But I think a lot of us are taught to think that way.
It's a good way to ponder, because I think even as I've climbed to whatever level I'm at, you also know the people who are anti-competitive or who are anti-collaborative and who aren't actually wishing
I'd
you the best.
stay away from those people.
Yeah.
I'll be outspoken. There are sharp-elbowed people in this world, and you can feel them a mile away, and let them be them. I don't think you need to be antagonistic or do anything about it. Don't let them in your peer group.
Yeah.
Don't even invite them.
Which kind of goes to show that if you are the collaborative one, you might win even more than the really good competitive one. Yes. Because they don't want to let them in. Yeah.
And look, I think I'm all about competing and winning and thriving. I don't want it to sound like I'm not, but your odds of getting from the bottom rung to the top rung go way up if you're willing to share the ride and share your best ideas. That's the other thing. And one thing I definitely have learned over 30 years of working in business, this thought that you have this unique idea in your head that no one else does is far-fetched. It really is. And walking around thinking that is not helpful.
What's the worst thing somebody can say in a pitch to you?
That was a bit of a orthogonal question.
Well, my thought process was.
Yeah, tell me that. That'll be helpful.
You hear ideas every day. And I bet you often hear, this is revolutionary. You've never heard this before. Let me tell you this idea for this business. And you're like, well, that was the 42nd pitch I've heard on this same idea, which is probably why you come to think that no ideas are unique.
Yes, that's for sure. And I've also watched founders kind of get really bogged down in a ditch thinking someone, invaded their space and stole their stuff. And I don't think it's helpful to them moving forward. And I don't even think it's true. I think it's pretty, here's a great example. Do you think there'll be a new age CRM built around AI that'll start from zero, code and zero and will be better than Salesforce.com, and it won't evolve from all those fields, but it'll evolve in a different way? 100%. And there's probably 20 founders doing it, right? Yeah. I don't know which one will win, but the odds that I thought of that first is like, that's silly. It's silly to walk around with that notion. Yeah. It's funny with the thing that I thought of when you ask about the founders. I was watching American Idol last night. I've watched it since season 1. It's like it's my guilty pleasure. It's like my Hallmark channel. But they've really got into over dramatizing these journeys that they have. And some founders have started putting that in the front of their pitch. Like, my mom almost died, and that's the reason I'm starting this thing. And it gets a little cringy, That's not the worst thing, but I think you really start the meeting off poorly if that seems insincere, especially if you're telling a story that's that heavy. And so I started an accounting software pack, you know what I'm saying?
So the total addressable market is
No, I'm just saying they're not connected,
That's
so
amazing.
Be authentic. Be authentic. Don't be inauthentic.
You have a lot of stories, I think, that kind of show how most of these people who win are authentically obsessed with whatever it is they're doing. And you told this story about there was like a Steve Jobs of China and a ridiculous thing he did with Post-it notes on his employees' cars. Can you tell that story? Because I was like, that is a perfect example of obsession.
Yeah, you're talking about Lei Jun. So Lei Jun is the founder of Xiaomi. And as I go into the story, I'm going to share with you something a famous and very successful Chinese venture capitalist told me on my last trip. He said, every single founder and venture capitalist in China studies the U.S. relentlessly. They watch the YouTube interviews, they listen to the podcasts, they study them like crazy. He said, founders and VCs in America don't study Chinese. And I said, ooh, that's a profound statement, right? Like, just even thinking about that's pretty profound. So in that spirit, I would encourage everyone to go watch I think it's the 2025 Lei Jun State of the Union on Xiaomi, which is translated on YouTube. Because that's where I got this data from. But it's worth watching because he's as good as Toby. And I fortunately met him about 20 years ago, and this is his third company since then. But about 10 years ago, he decided to build a phone, which isn't easy. And it's now the third best-selling handset in the world, Xiaomi. And then about 5 years ago, when Apple was thinking about building a car, he decided to build a car. And that car is now in production, sold out. There are some amazing reviews online of Americans who have gotten a hold of the car, including the CEO of Ford. So you can go watch those and read those to get a sense of this guy. But in that State of the Union, he tells the story you talked about, where once he decided to build a car, he took a first shot at it and realized it wasn't special, and then he backed up. And some of this talk comes from the back up and reapproach it. But he decided that he wanted to drive every car he possibly could to get experience. And because he had been driven around by a driver, which is very common in China. And so he went through the parking lot of his employees, and if there was a car he had never driven before, he put a Post-it note on it that said, I want you to tell me the 3 things you like about your car and the 3 things you hate, and I want you to let me drive it. And he claims he did this for like 250 cars in his parking lot.
So interesting.
And when you hear a story like that, you could be cynical and say, well, maybe he made that up, like it's a founding story and it like is super compelling. But maybe he actually did it. And maybe he was a first principle learner, like going after this new thing. And the irony is that's an activity that anyone at GM or Ford or Chrysler or whatever could have done and probably haven't.
No
right?
chance.
Like this kind of base rate, start at zero kind of thing. And when you see that, there's a notion that I get accused of being like an agent of the CCP sometimes, just because I try and be eyes wide open. I'm not trying to be on anybody's side. But when you meet someone like Lejeune and see that, and then you hear this idea, oh, the Chinese are just copycats, they're not innovators. It's just not true. Like, it's just flat out not true.
I haven't been to China.
If you see these reviews of this car and you see the founding principles at work inside of Lejeune's head, he's special. He's very, very special. Every bit as special as Toby or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. And it's valuable to know that, like, as opposed to sticking your head in the sand and not knowing that. Like,
course.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you haven't been to China, but once you've been there, I mean, I remember I first went there like probably like 15 years ago. And I remember back then thinking the light shows were crazy that they had over, there was whatever the main thing is in Shanghai, where they have like the kind of, it's European, bund. Right.
Yes.
It's European on one side and the bund is on the other. And I had to live there for a few months. It was not my favorite place to live 15 years ago. It was really polluted back then. But
it's very different today.
Yeah. But even then, I remember thinking, no, this isn't copying. I mean, this thing's different here, just in the same way you feel, I think, if you go into Japan for different reasons.
No doubt.
But it kind of has this idea that I really liked from you too, which is, have you ever seen I can't remember who said it, but that was a basketball player. And he was like, you don't get paid for the game. You get paid to practice.
Yeah.
Like, the game is the reward. The practice is what the pay is for.
Yeah.
And then you have a quote in here, which is that the will to win is not nearly as important as the will to prepare to win, from Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
And so I want your take on preparation. Like, how important is it? Do most people do it? And how should you prepare to
there's
win?
an anecdote in the book that Kobe Bryant, after winning, I think, his fourth championship and third MVP. I'm probably getting those wrong. It might be a different number, but some ungodly level of success in that offseason, reached out to Hakeem Olajuwon and asked if he could come to Houston. So not only did he ask, but I'm coming to you to learn Hakeem's footwork in the post. So this is a guy, unbelievable forward, easily could be a point guard, but he's now going to add to his game the ability to do these post moves. And he went down there and did it. And the press showed up and they interviewed Olajuwon about it and all, but it's a powerful statement that someone with that much success was trying to find an area of where they could improve and was willing to kind of go to that length to go figure it out. And I ask anyone who's chasing any career, are you like that? Do you go home and learn on your own time in your field? And I think a lot of young adults who go through this system, which I don't like, and I think has gotten perverse. Do you learn at home on your own time? And I don't think the answer is yes. And I think it's partially because they've been through such a pressure cooker and grinder that they want to believe, oh, it's over. Man, I'm glad that's over. Like, oh, I'm going to go get a job. That learning's over. And when learning feels forced, it's not fun. And it is a grind. We had a chance working on the book to talk to Angela Duckworth, and 10 years after she released Grit, which said it's 50% perseverance and 50% passion, she said if she could do it over again, she'd weight passion way more highly than perseverance, because we've taught young adults to grind. We've taught them how to grind. They're the Eagle Scout and the 1,500 plus SAT, and they just achievement, volunteer. But we didn't allow. We took away the opportunity to explore and learn and discover and find what they love. And when you love something, like I gotta believe Kobe did playing basketball, that that decision to go do the Allage one thing didn't feel like work. And I'm coming back to your point about will to practice. Like if you adore something like Danny does restaurant, we talked to Danny last year, finishing up the book. I was working with a co-writer and researcher. That's why I keep saying we. And he was just coming back from a trip to Europe with all his top chefs. Like they went to all the new top, Michelin places and took copious notes and like a learning journey. Like he's still doing it, and I don't think that's possible if you don't adore the field you're in. Like if you don't have this immense emotional connection to what it is, you don't study it at home. And one of the things that became quite aware to me, especially when we translated this from just a video presentation, a book, and did a whole bunch of research, we probably read 100 more biographies. The people that are wildly successful, they do this like intuitively, like they're just out learning constantly about what's new in their field. And it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. And the other thing I would say that's also something we discovered in the book, a lot of people turn hobbies into careers. Like, because that's the thing. The hobby's the thing they're studying for fun. And one thing I hope with this book is that it gives more people the permission to go do the crazy thing they love. Because I think the system doesn't want to support that for well-intentioned purposes, but I think they're going to be more fulfilled and they're going to impact more people if they go give that a shot. I really do.
It's so good. It's also so contagious when you feel another obsessed person.
No doubt.
And for some reason we were sold this lie that, why don't you just take some time off? Why don't you have work-life balance? Why don't you go do something not related to what you do? Well, if you're actually really into what you do, that sounds so uninteresting to me. You know what I find so uninteresting? Just any movie, anything on Netflix, going out and drinking and partying because I want to forget my life and what reality is. It's so uninteresting. But if I didn't get lucky enough in many ways to do things that I love to do, I bet I would find all those things really interesting.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I kind of have two reactions to this. One, I don't want to condemn people. Like it may be that you just have this perfect family life, this incredible church community. You may truly love those things so much and feel that's not a career, and that you're going to do your best in your job and then get home and love those things. And I don't want to condemn that path. I really don't. But I think far too few people look at their career as something they could love. Yeah. And so that's what I'm after. Like if you have an inkling, like if you just have this suspicion, maybe I should be doing something else, try my book. I want to offer an alternative door for you to think about, But
don't you also, I think we also have to be honest with people about, like, have you ever met somebody that was semi-curious and not obsessed, but won in huge 3 standard deviation ways?
No.
So it's like, you're not condemning it at all by saying live a beautiful life where work isn't the center of it. No problem.
Right.
But don't assume you're going to go become a world changer.
No, you should assume that there's this other person we're describing is competing with you.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's scary.
That's what you should assume. This study, you mentioned like watching Netflix. I think it's like a really interesting test of whether you've identified this thing you should go chase. Would you study it instead of binge watching Breaking Bad? Like, does it compete with that on that level? For the person in your shop that played with Clawbot until all night, the answer is obviously yes. Yeah. Right. And so it's a great way to test whether you've found, and that's the first principle in the book. It's the hardest part, like just knowing what it is.
That is hard.
I think it's the hardest part.
I only have a few more questions, but one of them I have we hear a lot this idea of like the young founder. I mean, gosh, you were in a movie about it. It was like, young founder, crazy, out to change the world. And sometimes I think people feel like it's too late. Like, what if there's somebody listening right now that's like, I'm mid-career. Like, I don't know if I can just go do what I love, Bill. Like, must be nice you and Cody talking about this.
Well,
not for me.
Yeah,
what would you say?
Well, I have two reactions to it. One, Daniel Pink wrote this great book about regrets. And one thing that he has studied academically, and not just in the U.S., across tons of different geographies, people as they get older, the thing that causes them the most rumination and anxiety is regrets of inaction. They don't regret the mistakes. Humans are remarkably forgiving to themselves. Oh, took a wrong turn, learned a lesson, never do that again. Like, they don't dwell on it. But the thing they never tried, they dwell on. And the older they get, he has this great graph, the older they get, the more it weighs on them. So if you can keep that in your brain, there's a great video you can go see of Bezos talking about being in Central Park, thinking about whether he should go start this online bookstore or not. And he came up with what he said it was nerdy, but he admitted it anyway, called the regret minimization framework, where he imagined himself being 80 and used that to reflect on the decision. And I think it's awesome. Like, one of the ways I walked away from 2 successful jobs in pursuit of my dream job was saying to myself, do I want to be doing this 30 years from now? So that's my first thing I would tell them. Maybe go read Daniel's book and like get in touch with, are you sure you don't ever want to do this? And then the second thing I would say is there's a special chapter in the book for these people called Never Too Late. And I walk through, I give an example of about 20 people that started really late in life, but I walk through 4 examples, including our fellow Austinite, Mr. Burt Beveridge, better known as Tito, that had been a seismologist and a mortgage broker and started thinking about launching a spirit company at the age of 40. And is the most successful spirit in North America today.
And I have a bunch of friends that are friends with him. I'm not friends with him, but they just say he's an incredible human who's super obsessed with his craft, like, to this day, even though he sold, didn't he?
No,
he still
not
owns
only
it.
did he not sell, this would be great for your audience, he's 100% of the equity cap table.
I do love that. I do love that. And I've never raised capital for this company. And the other day, somebody asked me why. We get approached, whatever. And somebody asked me why. And I said, like, I have my friend Dino, who runs a company called Saronic. They're building ports and autonomous ships.
I'm familiar with the company.
Yeah, of course he's got to go raise a bunch of venture capital because he is building these huge things that could change, infrastructure trajectory.
Yeah.
The cool thing about media companies is this is just another type of leverage.
Yeah.
And so I could put capital leverage on top of what we're doing, but all the infrastructure is already built. I don't have to build a port.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg built it for me. All these other people did.
Yeah.
And then I get to plug our little ships into the infrastructure that already exists.
That's right.
And so you don't always have to go raise capital. And in fact, I love a venture capitalist that says, hey, we're not for everybody.
Yeah.
And most people shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I invest in startups. So like, I want the best ones to win too.
Yeah.
But I also want people to keep their company as much as they fucking can as a founder.
No doubt. 100%.
I guess that's where I want to kind of end maybe here. So I loved one of the articles you did back in the day about the business model of giving away $1 and getting paid 85 cents.
Yes.
And I'm curious for you today, like, what do you see in this atmosphere of venture capital today that you're like, we got to be careful on this? Because you've been a canary in a coal mine a few times.
Yeah. So in the AI space, there's so much hyper competition. Well, first of all, the venture capital world, via this competition I talked about, has evolved to a place where the biggest funds now proactively knock on the doors of the companies they want to invest in and offer them money. So the days when the company would run out of money or get close to running out and decide, oh, we're going to go raise now, is over. Like it's preemptive. It's 100% preemptive. And so you get a phone call that says, we want to put 300, 400, 500 million into your company. And you may be like, well, I've got all the capital I need. No thanks. But then they say, okay, we're going to go put it in your competitor. And so there's this global arms race. I lived it in the Uber Lyft thing, but now it's true in every single sector. And the reason this gets to your question is once you're in that place, and I would say AI coding is in this place right now, no one prices the cost anymore because they're definitely afraid of losing market share more than anything. So they price to get market share. They don't price to cost. Now, one day they'll have to price to cost. One day. And it will be a messy journey from here to there. And I fear that that's a reality in almost every sector at this moment in time. The venture industry used to get reset every 10 or 15 years. It'd just get walloped on the head and the number of firms would get cut in half and everyone would learn their lessons. And we were supposed to have a reset when AI came along. It had kind of started and then this huge disruption, everyone gets excited, money flows back in and we never had it. And so I can't predict when it will happen. It will probably be a long time from now, but it will happen. There will be a correction. It'll be messy. And that's why I would stay away from SPVs.
To circle it all up. I love that. You've essentially done a scary thing, I think, that a lot of people probably couldn't even understand, which is you take your money plus other people's money. You're the fiduciary of this money. And then you give it to somebody else. And you have some controls, but not all the controls. And especially in startup land, it's not like private equity where we can kind of run
you
the
guys
show.
have control.
which is
it's
good
very
and
different.
bad.
It's wildly different.
Right. So I'm just curious, how do you manage that? How do you manage being so, trying to be founder friendly and trying to tell these young people, go for the moon, hit the stars, while talking to you, Timco, about the fact that you're going to fiduciary their capital?
I think it's really hard. Like, I used to use this metaphor, which I don't think makes sense to anybody, but I'll use it anyway. When I was young, and I'm almost 60, sometimes a friend of yours had a bicycle that was a little old and rickety and not all together. And the handlebars weren't in perfect connection with the front wheel. There was slop in it. And so you kind of thought you were steering, but you just had to oversteer a lot and you kind of went down the road in a janky way. And it's a lot like that. You don't have the steering wheel and your ability to influence is limited. And so you do everything you can to earn the respect of the founder. And respect is a different word than affection, I think. And it's hard. Like, it's super hard. And the great ones have figured out how to do it. And by the way, it's even harder with sycophants living in the later stage investment rounds because they come in and say everything the founder wants to hear. And that makes it even harder because here's somebody with a lot of money showing up who's not doing what you're doing, And so it's a craft for sure.
Was that wild when the movie came out about, Uber and you and Travis and you were managing this bicycle in so many ways?
It was weird. It missed some points,
I imagine.
They like in the very first scene, they're in this super fancy office. I can assure you Uber started in the dingiest, smallest of offices like most startups do. And I already talked about how determined Travis was. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And I don't think the film captured that element. It was more a vilification kind of thing. So part of the reason it wasn't overly weird is it wasn't so accurate, and that allowed me to view it in a different way, if you would.
Yeah, that's actually kind of helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think I know I've been in the center of some things online, but whenever I have been, I don't know that our brain can actually disassociate what is really happening in real life versus when everybody's talking about you online.
I thought the WeWork film did a much better job of capturing some of the nuances, like around Masa.
Yeah.
And how Masa putting money in causes randomization and craziness. Lito in the character, and Lito did a ton of work for that role. I actually talked to him, and I don't know how they didn't win awards. Like,
I agree.
they were so good in that. But the character screaming, Masa wants me to be crazier. And that was real. That's how it really was.
Well, and also, you know what I took away from that one? He was so brilliant in so many ways too. Like, and so many people
Adam's a
vilify
force
him.
of nature. Maybe we can end with this anecdote,
Yeah.
but I remember where I was when he presented to us. Now, keep in mind, Benchmark's never done a real estate transaction in the history of the firm. And we're about 30 minutes into the presentation. This is Series A, right? So there's almost nothing there. And I knew we were going to do the deal, like without even talking to the partners, because I mentioned when we started, we talked about salesmanship, and he has a level of salesmanship that I had never seen before, like unit of one. And so you take the flyer, like you have to take the flyer.
This is similar to that, but what I took away also was like, I think his wife is portrayed kind of in a gnarly way sometimes.
Yeah.
But there were a couple moments where I was like, yeah, maybe not the best advice, but also fucking brilliant. And she seemed to push him to be better too. So it almost seems like these founders and maybe the people around them have to be on this edge between the two.
Yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but there are some very successful founders that eventually reined it in and got it together, but where you could have easily seen them going over the edge, at different points along the way, that didn't. But I think you're right. Being on that edge may be important.
Bill Gurley, this is so amazing. I so enjoyed. I mean, David and I have been reading your book. We have all these notes on it. And I also think it's really cool. At first I called Tim Ferriss, our mutual friend. And I was like, Tim, I want more stories from Bill. I was like, I want Bill to tell me about this and this. And he said like two really lovely things about you, which is one, he was like, he's like a pretty humble guy. So he doesn't he's really not going to like quote unquote spill the beans on all this stuff.
Right.
And then two, he was like, he's so smart. So we'll talk about whatever you want. But he goes, think about it for a second. When one person has been really successful in one thing that they've done for 30 years, how many chapters are in that book? And I was like, I think it's really cool that you put a bunch of chapters in this book and that you talk about something that can really help the next generation, not even the superheroes, but like everyone. So Thanks for writing the book. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
It was so useful.
Appreciate it.
You're not generating $10 million doing your one thing. You haven't arrived yet. You're not good enough yet.
This episode is with Mike Michalowicz, who wrote the book on profiting first and is going to teach us step-by-step playbooks for you guys to profit and make money right now in your business.
To have a successful business, there's an intersection of three key elements you have to nail. What sales does is it can bring in more cash, but also brings in more organizational stress. You have more responsibility now. Or customers will never say to your face, your business kind of sucks. But what they will do is go online and slam your reputation. So you can't trust their words, but you can trust their wallet. I got a magical Jedi mind trick question. I guess I got two that will blow your mind away. First question.
We've been blown away by how fast the show is growing. Like getting to hang out with you every single week is so cool. But most of the people who tune in every week still haven't subscribed, which is crazy. It is the simplest way, though, to help us keep scaling, bringing the best guests like Mike Michalowicz and making the big deal a big deal. So I can't thank you enough for your support. Like we would be nowhere without you guys. And I just want to jump back into my conversation with Mike, but I also want you to do it subscribed. Oh, and share it with a friend if you like this episode. I think it's better when you profit together,
Can I start with some kind of real challenges, rapid fire that we've heard from owners?
Yeah, throw them at me.
Okay. What if you're a business owner, you're weeks away from running out of money? You're kind of panicked, you don't know what to do next. What's your first move if you call Mike?
All right, so first thing is you acknowledge you're pretty much every business owner on the planet. There's a saying that most businesses are on the brink of failure. And the statistics show that most businesses don't have enough cash flow for 4 weeks. But my analysis, and I love contrarian thinking, my analysis is most businesses are not on the brink of failure because most businesses find a way to survive that moment. Somehow, some way, most businesses, yet again, doggy paddle and get above water. So I think most businesses are on the brink of success. It's just a good strategic move. So what we do, if a business like that calls, and I also invest in businesses, we do what's called reclamation services. We go into businesses that are specifically in struggle, is we go through the client base, we deploy the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, identify who the best customers are and say, hey, what can we do right now to serve you? Because they're already the best customers. We get revenue in that way. We usually cut the lowest 20% of customers because inevitably they are costing you money and you don't even see it. It's like, oh, I'm making revenue. This is great. The expenses are in excess of the revenue, and the emotional weight is killing you. So we get rid of the unfit customers, we amplify the best customers, then we start realigning the business around that.
I love it. So two moves. You call up your best customers and say, basically, you're asking them, but not this way. How can we sell you more things? Which is what else do you need, and how do we increase the LTV of every single person?
Yeah, and you tell them you love them. Like when you tell a customer, hey, you're such an important customer to me. I value you so much. I just want to see if there's any other way to serve you. Yeah. Reciprocity kicks in. They're like, we love you too. And we were thinking about getting this. Can you do it? Yeah.
I love that. Okay. What do you do for someone who has more revenue than they've ever had before, but is actually making less profit?
That, again, is every business I know. I was speaking yesterday at an event, and I asked the group, it's similar size. I said, who wants to increase their revenue? Everyone's like, that's what we need to do. That's the solution. I said, arguably, that's one of the most dangerous things to do because it's a reckless belief. We believe that sales cures everything, and that is total nonsense. Total nonsense. What sales does is it can bring in more cash, but also brings in more organizational stress. You have more responsibility now, more things you need to service. So when a business says we're cranking up revenue, I am looking to see, are they doing it through diversifying their offering, which I think is a mistake. Instead of becoming special, they're doing many things and they dilute their ability, they're not efficient. We'll look, are they serving customers with varying demands? Customers that are perhaps big names, but then they assert their strength. I had a client of mine I worked with. Walmart was their best customer, number one in revenue. We looked at them, their demands were off the charts. They said, when you deliver your product, it was like a bracelet thing, they said, it's got to come on a Monday at 10:30 in the morning, and if you're outside like a 5-minute window, we're going to penalize you. If the SKU, that UPS code, if it's more than a quarter inch below the top of the box, we're going to penalize you. And Walmart does this for efficiency. That's why they do it. But my client, they saw that as good revenue. It was crushing them with the penalties. Their number 2 customer was Dollar General. Is that around here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dollar General's like, hey, deliver it whenever you can because we're always playing second fiddle to Walmart. So Cody, you'll love this. Here's what he did. He put a sign above his desk, and he had 15 employees. The sign says this: our policy is to answer the call on the first ring. If it's the Dollar General, answer the call and start taking their order. And if Walmart calls, let it go to voicemail, and then call them back when you're done. The miraculous thing was the next one. It said, we always answer in the first ring. If the first call is Walmart, start taking their order. But while you're on the phone with Walmart, if Dollar General calls, immediately hang up on Walmart. Like, say, sorry, we have an emergency, disconnect and prioritize. So they're not cutting off customers or revenue, but they're prioritizing the quality revenue. It transformed his business. It was a family business. It was 25 years old. They were struggling to get 4 million. It went 4, 18, 27, sold it.
You know what's crazy too, and we'll take you guys through this process. So you'll go through a process where you basically analyze your cash flow, and we'll use a 13-week rolling cash flow, which I love. And then we'll also talk to you about your underlying clients. What's your best avatar versus your worst? Because I think a lot of times we lump our business all together. We don't know what customers cost us to get, and we certainly don't know what customers cost us to keep. And it's not because we're bad operators, it's because we're busy. And it's sort of hard. And so it takes this pause and analysis. And the truth of it is, your team is not going to do that. That is going to have to be a you thing at most levels of the business.
That is brilliant. I'll add to that, there's a real simple strategy that we've deployed. And what you do is you sort your clients out over the last year, the revenue they've generated for you. And the reason is people lie to each other constantly because it's social grace. Like when you saw me, like, hey, Mike, it's so good to see you. I'm a huge fan. I'm like, are you, Cody? Are you? But
I am.
Thank you. But could you imagine you come up to me and say, oh, your books really suck, Mike? Like, you can't do that because of social grace and not be like, well, that's offensive. And then we get into this disagreement. Or customers will never say to your face, your business kind of sucks. Poop 911's here. oh, it's kind of like more turd 411. You know what I'm saying? like they're never gonna. That was
a good one.
That was good. That was juicy. But they would never say that to you. But what they will do is go online and slam your reputation. So you can't trust their words, but you can trust their wallets. So don't trust words, trust wallets. If they buy from you repeatedly or they're demonstrating they value you. But there's a second test. It's the intersection of them valuing you, spending money, with your appreciation and enjoyment of them. So when the car ID pops up on your phone, are you like, oh my gosh, they're amazing? Or are you like, oh gosh, I wish they didn't exist? Which one do you pick? Because if you have a customer that generates a lot of revenue, but you don't like working with them, you automatically, inherently, subconsciously perhaps, deprioritize their service. You don't call them back as quickly, you delay it, you avoid it. So we want the intersection of best customers that you love working with, circle those customers and start to clone them. And what I mean by cloning them, I find out where they congregate, where's their associations or communities, where's the people like them hanging out, and I'm gonna insert myself there.
That's so good. Yeah, we obsess on client avatars, and I feel like the number one thing that most people do wrong in business is they sell demographically as opposed to really nailing their avatar. Like, I've never met a 45 to 65-year-old male 40% of the time and 60% of the time a woman. I mean, these days, who knows? But historically, no. And so, I really like this idea of what are the characteristics of this type of avatar, and then how do we go after them?
Yeah, and look for the congregation points. So when I'm targeting a market, I'll say, is there an association for this? This is when I'm selling B2B. Is there an association? Is there some kind of meetups or something like that? For example, maybe I'm serving pilots, retired pilots. Well, I'd say, is there a retired pilot association? Which actually I know there is. So that's an opportunity. They're already congregating. But if I look for single moms who hate their mom, that demographic exists, perhaps even in this room. But do they have a meetup club? Maybe not. If they don't have a congregation point, you have to assemble it yourself. It is the most exhausting, time-consuming effort. It rarely fails. So when someone says, I have a niche, it's, I serve single moms who don't like their moms. I mean, that's not a niche, because you have to now assemble them together. But if you're serving the airline retired pilot association, I know where they're going. They may have a dedicated podcast, and you insert yourself there, and they see you ubiquitously. They see you everywhere.
So good. Let's zoom out for a second. What does everyone get wrong about making money in business?
Okay, so this is very opinionated. It ain't about the money. And you probably heard that before, and when you don't have the money, it's very easy to say. It's very easy to focus on the money, and then when you do have the money, it's very easy to say it ain't about the money. My perspective is both. So I became a multimillionaire when I was in my early 30s. I had an exit to Fortune 500, Robert Half International. You've sold quite a bit.
I do remember that.
You remember them? They had account temps, office temps.
Yeah.
I was doing computer crime investigation, and the Enron trial broke. My company, right place, right time, we got the Enron trial. Now, to give context, we were not the prosecution. That's the FBI, the CIA, we were the defense. So if you remember names like Kenneth Lay, Andrew Fastow, they were our clients. They were guilty, by the way. That was their defense. They were guilty. And we got put on the map very quickly. What I assumed was, when I sold that business, and it was a lot of money, I was like, I've arrived. But I really didn't. What I did, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's important to admit it, is I thought I had to show the effects. So I bought all the stable of cars. I got a private place out in Lanai, which is an island owned by Larry Ellison now. For sabbatical, we got a place in a very affluent town in New Jersey where I live. And I'm like, look how important I am, people. And no one gives two craps. Then, total idiot, I blew all my money because I thought I knew everything. I knew very little. And with the collapse, no one really cared either. No one really cares. I found the essence of a good business is that it's an expression of our purpose. I know from the interviews I listened that you do, from the literature you put out, you're such an authentic, real human, that this platform is an expression of who you are. Listen, your mom is here. The last time my mom came, I was doing a puppet show in 3rd grade. That's a dream, to have your mom here. which also indicates the authenticity in this. I think too many entrepreneurs go for the money only to find out that was a mistake. We got to go for it because it's an expression of our heart. That's my opinion.
It's so true. And you know what else is crazy that I love that you talk about often? That statement, "It's never about the money," was so triggering to me when I didn't have any money. I'm like, that's cute, Mike. Like, give me $1 million, I'll figure it out.
Right.
But what I've increasingly realized is you never don't have enough money, you don't have enough knowledge.
That's right.
Because if you had more knowledge, you'd see that there are 372 ways to get the cash.
Yeah.
And the real question is just like, what's the best way? That like what's the best game you want to play? What's the right game you want to play for you? Who's the right investor? What's the right way to get capital? Like, it's just, then it becomes what's the right fit, never just, it doesn't exist, why don't I have it?
Yeah.
And if I could impart one thing to people more often, it would be that. And that you can make money doing anything, which is great. Pooper scooper. You know, like we're just also everybody should just wear their business shirts here because look how much marketing you guys are going to have like an ad on this podcast. It costs $1 billion, not for you two. Poop 911. Call my ladies.
Do you mind if I flip it on? I got a question for you.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So when it comes about money, I heard recently, and I've experienced this, and I'm curious about you, is there's not a single person who's ever had enough money. So I was talking to personal finance experts as this interview series, and consistently I heard wherever someone is financially today, they feel their freedom is double of their current worth. So if you're worth $100,000, when I get a $200,000, I'm good. And people too are saying 4, and people in the middle are saying 2. So I'm curious, have you arrived financially?
Oh, no.
No, right?
Never.
Bullshit.
I know. Is that
but
crazy?
Also true.
Yeah.
And me neither.
Well, even like Mom, we were having this walk this morning. Remember what you asked me? She was like, aren't you proud? Like the headquarters and look how everything's grown. And because most of my businesses have been remote for many, many years. I ran businesses where we had people all over the world. She's like, you have a, look, I can touch it, you know? Or do you take a second? And I literally was like, it feels like, what did I say? We haven't scratched the surface yet. So I totally think about it zero at any level but it's also because I love the game. Not necessarily like I want the bank account to be bigger. I still have, don't get me wrong. I mean, what do you ask me every time she sees me? She asks me, but who takes care of the money at your company? Every time, don't you? She's always like, but who's the CFO? Who's in charge of making sure you don't run out of money? Because if you didn't grow up with any money, that's like deep inside all of us. We're just like, but who's in charge and are they stealing from us? Yeah. And the answer is like, yeah, people are gonna steal from you at some point. That is true. And it'll also be fine and you'll keep going. But yeah, I agree. I don't think there's ever enough, but if you can flip it to stop talking about the dollar amount and start talking about like, it's never enough because I just want to see what am I capable of? Like I want to die having squeezed every last drop out of me. That's when I think it starts to get fun.
100.
You've seen the rarest of things, which is you lost it all.
Yeah.
And I think that is off. How many people here are almost more scared of people knowing that you lost it all and like seeing the flame out than actually not having the cash? Who else? I see a lot of nodding.
Yeah.
Like I think that is what scares us. But you're a perfect example of like, I was there. Nobody fucking cared and I'm fine.
No one cares.
That's wild.
Like no one cares. And it is true that saying that the people who do care don't matter and the people that matter, do care.
Wait, can I ask you a question? Did you have a very dark moment then when you were like, I lost everything. This is how I defined myself. Who am I?
Yeah. You want to go there?
Okay. Just in front of our 20 new best friends.
Yeah, exactly. So I wrote about it in my books. So this is the moment. So become a millionaire. I buy all these things. I got to start off with the arrogance I had. I bought a Land Rover, a BMW, and a Dodge Viper, all within 4 hours on the same day. Thanks for laughing. Right? And I thought, and the Viper was because in college, I saw the Viper. I said, when I arrive one day, I'll get it. I got this place out in Hawaii for a sabbatical. I joined a club. I also started investing. I invest in a whole different way now. I used to do basically private equity, putting in, but small tranches, angel, 50, 100, 200, all these different businesses. And this arrogant dick was like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're here, Cody. Mike's here. Here's the money. We have me. I have the Midas touch. I believed my own story. And there is, I looked up in the Webster Dictionary, there is a word for someone who has arrogance and ignorance. The word is dick. It's true. I was a total dick. And the Dodge Viper is like the winning trophy for dicks. Like, within 2 years, evaporated all that wealth. I lost every penny, Cody. And I'll never forget, my accountant calls me. It was February 14th, 2008, Valentine's Day. And he says, Mike, you have to declare bankruptcy. I didn't have enough money to pay my tax bill that year, and it wasn't even a tax bill. I came home. I have 3 children. My wife and my kids had prepared a meal, and I was sobbing when I came home. And that's when I told them what happened. I lost everything. Now, I'd been lying to my family by omission. My wife was like, how's business? And I saw my bank account. I don't know if you've been there. You see it dwindling. So logically, I saw it, but emotionally, I wasn't ready to accept it. I'm like, that one client's coming. So my wife would say, how's things going? I'm like, it's fine. It's good. But I had to face it. We lost our house 30 days later. We liquidated all our assets. The cars were gone. Viper was gone, thank God. Everything was gone. But this was the moment, and I'll probably start crying, so I got to go quick. My daughter asked me, she goes, Daddy, she was 9, can I still go to horseback riding lessons? Now, to give you context, it was $20 for a group of like 10 kids, and they ride around for a half hour. And I said, I'm so sorry, we don't have anything. And as I said that, she got up and she ran as fast as she could into her room, and I hear the door slam, and I'm sobbing. I'm like, oh my God, you and I, and we define ourselves as providers. We are here to provide for ourselves, our family, our community, our globe. And I'm like, my one effing job, I can't do it. My daughter is so scared, she ran away from me. And as I'm saying that, I hear someone going, the door comes swinging open, and she comes running down with those gangly legs, and she has a piggy bank in her hand. And she goes, Daddy, Daddy. She goes, I'll pay our bills. I was so embarrassed of that day. And you know, there's a saying about rock bottom. As difficult as it is, at least there's only one way to go, which is up, right? It's a beautiful saying. It's total bullshit. It's total bullshit. You hit the bottom, you get dragged along the floor of self-disdain and hatred. I'm like, I'm a scumbag. And I went through 2 years of depression, self-diagnosed. I never went to a therapist. Do now, you should. Drank a lot, I don't know. But in reflection, it's the greatest moment of my life, because I said, I'm gonna fix this. Your traumas, whatever they may be, my traumas, our traumas often are the biggest opportunity. I'm on a path, I'm committed to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty because I know how visceral it is. I know how freaking bad it is. I am committed to make every entrepreneur I come in contact with as profitable as possible. Because honestly, I need to learn that for myself. What we teach is what we need to learn. And so I'm just putting it out there, putting it out there, putting it out there. I'm not great with money, I'm better, but God, I'm never gonna stop teaching it.
I love that. How many of you guys resonate with that? You've had, yeah. I mean, my dad calls it the head in the hands in the dark with no idea what to do moment. And I've had one too.
What was yours?
Mine was the same thing. A company was almost out of cash that we had, and I didn't tell anybody. And mine was like really, it was almost so fast. It was like a cancer diagnosis where you die the next 30 days. Like, I didn't know. I didn't really have the slow burn. We had made a terrible mistake in a business. And it's often, I think mistakes are usually who's, not how's. Yeah. And so I had trusted somebody, and that was my fault. And I had let them have too much control over one of these businesses. And the way that they had reported it had not really anticipated some expenses we were going to have, and also that we would have seasonality in the business. And I was so embarrassed about it that I called him in the middle of the night, and he said 2 things to me. He said, one, when we step on a nail at a construction site, we don't ask how we got there, what happened, what's going on, do I take a bubble bath so I feel better? We pull out the fucking nail. And so he goes, you're gonna do the hard thing. You're gonna do the hard thing right now, which is you're gonna look at your business, and that's why I obsess for all of you guys on making sure that when you are in that poverty center, how do we get out of it immediately? How do we, fuck the emotions, fuck the feelings, we pull out the nail. You don't wonder how the nail got there. You fix the safety issues later, you wear better boots the next time. And so he did a really good job of snapping me out of it, of saying, instead of staying here worrying about it, which is why I'm always saying to you guys, money really likes speed. He basically was like, why would you worry about this one more second? You're not going to sleep anyway tonight. Stay up. Stay up. Let's look at the books. Let's fix this. And what I've found in investing in hundreds of businesses now, it's almost always fixable, to your point. Almost always. But the reason it won't be is because you don't move fast enough, you don't have people who have been there before around you, and you don't focus on profit. You focus on what is gonna look good, what is gonna be okay. Yeah. Like, sometimes you gotta do the really awful thing, which is rip off the Band-Aid. But I'm so glad you talked about that, because one of our missions here is, we've looked a lot at the data surrounding small business. And most small businesses fail. That is true. Most of them do. Nobody talks about it. Most of them do. And a lot of the reason why, I think, is due to not having systems of control for situations in which emotion gets high. You have a ton of systems and stories and ways that you kind of are honest about yourself. You keep yourself in your, I'll call it your bumper lanes, because you know that you have self-awareness to be like, I'm not the best with money. The people that get in trouble are the ones that think they're the best with it, right? And so I want to talk about a couple of things. You can kind of pick which one. I want to talk about either the pumpkin plan, or I want to talk about clockwork, or I want to talk about beacon. Do any of those speak to you in this?
Yeah, they do. So I'd say pumpkin plan to start. What I did, just to give context, that's one of the books I wrote. And it's the runner-up to Profit First in popularity. What I did was I hired a business coach before business coaches really existed. This is back in the 90s. And he came into my business and said, day one, we're going to go to a pumpkin field. I'm like, what? He's like, you got to understand biology because there's this thing called biomimicry. And when you study what Mother Nature's figured out, she's pretty freaking smart and she spent a lot of time figuring things out. You can copy those strategies and usually they have a better success rate than something that's artificially engineered. So I went to a pumpkin farm and studied colossal pumpkin farming. And sure enough, it works for business too. So that's the context.
Talk about why and what you got from it.
Yeah, so there was a few things. The first one was, it's called seed selection. And basically, to have a successful business, there's an intersection, it's like a Venn diagram of 3 key elements you have to nail, and the likelihood of growing is much greater than otherwise. Most entrepreneurs simply say, I'm doing this because this is my historical vocation, I have some experience, I'm gonna do it, or I heard you can make a lot of money doing it. And I don't know if either of those are actually necessarily good. The first thing that we ask, and I ask myself, is do I have something that's truly distinct in the industry? Can you redefine the industry? I'll give you a personal example. Who's heard of the Savannah Bananas here? Okay, they're exploding, right? So Jesse Cole is a friend from before, right when the Savannah Bananas were starting, and they used Profit First. I went down and coached the organization. What he did was say, what is the industry doing currently and sucks about it? He said, I don't know if any of you know this, but baseball is boring. It's boring. So he's like, that sucks. And he went through all these different things. So the first thing he said is, what are the things that people don't like? I'm gonna unsuck it. That sounded gross. That sounded very, I don't know why it sounded so gross, but it did. So he and his wife, Emily, started to redefine baseball to make it not boring and to make it entertaining. The second thing is they put intentional constraints in place. So they use Profit First, which inherently means there's less money to spend. And one of my favorite things is he said, we don't have enough money for like a cheer squad or anything to entertain people. So he's like, what do you do when you have no money? He's like, you ask your fans. So he said, if you're 80 years or older, and you're a woman, you're on our cheer squad, and teeth are optional. And it's true for half the squad. I met the squad, and they're the Nana Bananas. And people lose their effing minds. Like, we lose our minds watching this. So what makes you truly unique, better than the competition, is not noticeable. You answer the phone in 2 rings, I answer in 1. I'm technically better. The customer won't notice. You run a standard baseball game, I have a grandma banana dancing around, I win. You gotta be different. Secondly is you have to have client demand for it. So I could do something very different. I could be your first guest that comes dressed like Bozo the Clown, waka waka. I come in with my big floppy shoes. Everyone will notice it's different, but is there demand for a weirdo that does that? Maybe not, and now I've compromised myself. So who's the customer that wants that? And it's not your standard baseball fan. They're not there for the winning game, they're there for the winning experience. So he's redefined the customer. And the last part is, to your earlier point, is systemization. And most people don't understand what systemization is. Systemization is where you can attract prospects, convert them to customers, collect revenue, have them raving about the experience, all while you're sleeping. Without any of your active input, with the entrepreneur not doing any of that, now you have a systemized business. And so what I learned from the pumpkin plan is that's the seed. And just like growing a colossal pumpkin, you need a seed that matches the environment, the soil content, the climate. You need a seed that matches up with those 3 elements.
Some of the greatest businesses start as nothing more than a notebook full of scribbles. But ideas aren't enough. They need execution. With GoDaddy Aero, execution is fast. A few prompts and you get a website, logo, email, and even social content. Minutes, not months. You go from scribbles on a paper to a polished online business you can actually grow. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, launch your business today with GoDaddy Aero. Head to godaddy.com/Codie Sanchez and see what's possible there.
By the way, this live episode, if you guys liked it, if you want more, well, I have a live event. I only do one a year. It's huge. How big? Really big. In Austin, Texas, just for people who want to make more money, buy businesses, build businesses. It's called Main Street Over Wall Street. So if you liked this episode, you're probably going to want to be there. There's only a couple hundred spots left. So click below. I want to shake your hand in person in Austin, Texas, or go to msows.com. MSOWS. We'll see you there.
So let's say that somebody doesn't have their, I believe you call it their prize pumpkin. Let's say that they don't have this differentiator, this unique component. What do you tell them to do? How do people start thinking about that?
Dude, I don't know why I called you dude. Is that cool?
I love dude.
All right,
yes.
Dude. I called my friends dude, so I didn't even
That's
know.
Great. Me too.
Subconsciously, you just qualified. So dude, this is what you gotta do. I got a magical Jedi mind trick question. I guess I got two that will blow your mind away. And it's not what you think. That's how Jedis roll. First question, ask your best customers, those ones we identified, what am I doing right? Now here's why this is a Jedi mind trick. They will not tell you what you're doing right. So I used to work with hedge funds. They were one of my first company. We did technical services for hedge funds. They had Bloomberg's and ILX and all these different systems. I went to my best customer, Appaloosa Management. I said, what am I doing right? And they said, you respond very quickly. Now this is in the 90s. They said the typical computer guy was taking like a full day to get on site when our system went down. They got backup systems, but you get on site within 4 hours. Now here's the Jedi part. When your customer tells you you're doing right, they don't tell you what you're doing right. They tell you how they're judging you, what they're observing. You and I you do thousands of things for your customer. Your customer does not see the 1,000 things. They see 1 or 2 things. So when you ask them what I'm doing right, they tell you the thing they see. So when my client said, you respond quickly, I said, holy crap, I'm not responding fast enough. Because that's what he's measuring. So I figured out a way, it was real simple, dispatch one of my technicians or myself to be within a half-hour radius of Appaloosa Management, and anytime he had a problem, I would leave my other clients, I have an emergency with my number 1 client, Dollar General, get there, and I was getting on site within a half hour. Within a month, he's like, I don't know what you're doing, dude, but it is blowing my mind. Like, the service level is skyrocketed. He's like, we're telling everyone about it. So trick 1 is what I'm doing right. It's actually what you need to do better. Trick 2 is what am I doing wrong? But here's a Jedi mind trick. Don't ask what you're doing wrong because people lie to each other, social consequence. Ask what is wrong with my industry. It's the person outside the room. So when I leave here, you can have a candid conversation like, oh, Mike was not that good. He spoke a little quickly and he did a lispy thing that didn't work. Like whatever, you can say what you want. But to my face, you're like, oh, you were great. Good tips, Mike. You can't tell me the truth to my face only when I leave. So have the conversation about the person outside the room, the general industry. So I said, what's wrong with the computer industry? This is when you don't remember the Palm Pilot, you're way too young. Do anyone remember the Palm Pilot? Okay, you're over 50. Over 50. No, you're not over 50. If you don't know what the Palm Pilot was, it was the first smartphone that was neither smart nor a phone. That's basically it, right? It was the weirdest thing. And he said, my computer company, my last guy tried to repair the Palm Pilot, and he charged me more than just replacing it. I wish there was fixed billing. We moved to fixed billing in the early 2000s when MSPs only moved to it in the 2015s or so. So what am I doing wrong is your opportunity what's the industry doing wrong is your opportunity to differentiate from the industry.
That's so good.
I got fired up there.
It's good. Okay. I mean, it is amazing how the right questions serve you so much better than the immediate answers. It's because you can just rinse and repeat. One of my pet peeves at our companies is we send a lot of surveys. I hate surveys. So I have like how many of you guys get a survey? You're like, thank God that came out. I needed more things to respond to in my email inbox. It's my huge pet peeve. I'm always like, instead, we should actually, I'm curious on that. I'm like, we should actually try to sell people more things. And the reason why is because then you actually know what they want. And if you sell something and nobody wants it, you're like, oh, that's the survey.
That is
the money's
gold.
The survey.
That is gold.
Right?
So I remember.
Do entrepreneurs sell enough to their customers? Are most entrepreneurs scared of selling?
They absolutely do not sell enough, and they don't sell the right way. I actually believe MVPs are not the right way to sell. So an MVP is a minimum viable product. I think that's too far advanced. We do a technique we call sell to tell. What we do is say, I was a co-owner in a manufacturing business for a while. That we made leather products, sheaths specifically for knives. And instead of making a prototype and seeing what was out there, we simply announced to our audience, we're thinking about making a sheath and it's going to have this feature and that feature. Are you interested in buying it? But we asked the most important question. If you are, put down a deposit now. People speak the truth through their wallets. I was actually thinking about doing a conference at my old high school, but to pull it off, we needed 250 people there. We reached out to our audience. We had 75 people put a deposit down, and we said, no, this isn't going to go, and refunded their deposits. Ironically, prior to that, our marketing team said, well, why don't we just ask? We had over 1,000 people say, oh, I'm in. That's amazing. And if we acted on that, we would have blown money and embarrassed myself at my old high school.
I'm always scared people aren't going to show up for my parties.
Oh, cool. Rock and roll.
Literally every time. Still, it never stops. Okay, so you sell to tell, which I love.
Yeah.
Do you have any good frameworks for how to know if you are selling enough as an entrepreneur? It's one of my beliefs that most entrepreneurs are too scared to sell, and so they don't do it frequently enough. How do you know if you're selling enough?
The act of selling as opposed to the dollar number.
100%.
Yeah.
Are we asking our customers for enough things? Are we asking for enough upsells? Are we? What is our relation between content and actual conversion?
Yeah, I think the two indicators is if you have customers come back to you and say, please stop that, that's a good indicator, and listen up, particularly your quality clients. Often we listen to the one naysayer who doesn't matter, like, you sell so much, you totally suck, and they've never bought from you, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll never sell again. So listen to your best customers. Secondly is if you see every time you sell a decline in purchasing, and I've seen that before, that someone sells so much, people are like, you know what, I'm just turned off to you. All you do is sell. I think we have to care for our customers at an amplitude of a 5 to 1, maybe a 10 to 1, just acts of service, caring for them, educating them, entertaining them, because that builds reciprocity, and then the sell becomes obvious. But I think particularly small businesses serve at like 100 to 0. Like all they're doing is like, I love my community, I'll do anything for them, and they don't monetize it. I would say, Cody, your customers, people in this room, my customers, not in this room, maybe, want us to be profitable. And your clients want you to be profitable. In fact, it's the number one customer, number one person in your life that wants to be profitable is not you, it's actually your customer. And we don't believe that. Could you imagine, you go see your doctor, you have a heart situation, you rush in, Doctor 1 comes out and she says, here's the situation, I'm not profitable. I'm nearly broke. I'm really paying for money. I'm just selling anything to anyone, and I've decided to generalize. I'm going to do neurosurgery, pediatrics, geriatrics, anything with an actix, I'm in. Doctor 2 comes out and she says, I am wickedly profitable. I make a boatload of money because I am wildly successful at what I do. In fact, all I do is serve this one situation. Which doctor are you going to pick? Doctor 2. You want your doctor to be profitable. And listen, maybe you're not providing life-saving services. You're providing life-altering services. Your customers want to know that you're profitable because then you treat them as the number one customer. They won't say, hey, can you charge me more? Can you rip me off a little? But they will say, I want your undivided attention. I want the best of you. And all those things are indicators of I want you to be profitable. I see you. I see you.
Well, it's such a good point. I mean, I don't know if anybody else feels like Mark Zuckerberg knows their purchasing pattern better than their husband does, but like Mark's got me on Instagram. Those ads come up, I want to buy. But if I go to double click on a shirt or an outfit, and the cost of that shirt or outfit is like $7.99, I don't buy. Why? Because I think the quality is going to be bad, because I think it's not actually going to be a good service. So not only do I think we don't sell enough, I think we price ourselves out of deals all the time because we're the cheapest, because we're like, oh, no, I want to overserve the customer. No, you lost my business because I don't trust that it could be quality at that price. And so I want to talk a little bit. You have multiple.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah, that's what I want you to do.
So I would buy that $7 shirt. And I think what's important about that is you have to bifurcate your customers. A large majority of customers are the cheapo customers. And that's me in that situation. But you care about the quality of your clothing, and therefore you're going to pay a premium. Now, I play guitar. I bet you if I saw a $1,000 guitar, I might buy it. I don't know if you play guitar. Do you? Okay. So you'll buy the $7 guitar, I suspect. And what price dictates is the quality of customer. You will find customers at the lower price point, And for anyone here that sells at a low price point, if you ever found that your customers are really bitchy and moany and they really suck, it's because you're attracting the shit customer, the one who says, I don't really care about this, I just need a shirt, so I'll pay the $7. And that's why I think we need to have a higher price. We get a higher value customer that's more vested in the outcome, and they're actually a higher quality customer.
What do you think about, I tend to think that when you solve rich people's problems, they pay more and they appreciate it more, by and large. And when you're a junior entrepreneur, or not even junior, when you're not the best entrepreneur in the world, I almost like solving more luxury problems because there's more margin in them typically, and you don't have to get as many. So it doesn't have to be such a volume game until you're good. Do you think that's true? Or do you think when you go and serve luxury customers, you better be luxury, you better be top tier, you better be great?
Great. That's such a good question. I think the quantity game is really difficult to compete in because you only become profitable when you can handle that volume, which means exacting systems. That's why Walmart's so good. But they have to demand from their providers that it has to arrive at 10:30 and there has to be a SKU at a certain point. Small businesses, we don't have the resources typically to pull that off, so that's very difficult. When it comes to quality, I think is misunderstood. Quality, I think we hear that and we say, well, it's a special fabric or it's something that's really of long-lasting value. But quality simply means distinct. I'll give you an example. My youngest son, this is like a bad father moment. When he was 6 years old, I wanted to show him what devotion and commitment was, and it was the Olympics. It was like the Beijing Olympics. Michael Phelps wins like gold number 1 billion. And in this particular race, I don't know if you all remember, he was actually in third place, and he's swimming like super hard, and there's like 3 meters to go. He's in second place. There's a meter to go, and the person in the lead, I think from the Ukraine, is reaching out to touch the wall, and Phelps jumps out of the water like a shark and slaps the wall. And there's like this long pause, and it pops up, and Michael Phelps won by 0.001 seconds. And I jump up, I'm watching my son, I'm like, Jake, that's the world's best. That's how you do it. Total commitment, total devotion. That's the highest level performer. And he looks at me and goes, but Daddy, Michael Phelps isn't the world's best. Jimmy Mickeldorf is. Now, here's the bad dad moment. I said, who the fuck's Jimmy Mickeldorf? Like, I never heard of it. He's like, Daddy, he's in kindergarten. Never say it to your kids, by the way. He goes, Daddy, Jimmy's in my kindergarten class. He can swim across Mountain Lake. It's the lake near us. And he's like, he's the only kid in the world that can do it. I was like, oh my gosh. So the context of the best and quality is the context of the consumer's world. For me, it's the Olympic stage. For him, it's his kindergarten class. And Susie can make the biggest cannonball. She's a rock star for him. And it's like, oh my gosh, I am such an idiot. So when it comes to quality, I just ask, we have to know who our customer is. And what can we do that's unique and distinct to them they never experienced before? And now you've introduced quality.
That's so good. Let's talk about distraction a little bit. You have a lot in multiple of your books. I think I'm referencing the pumpkin plan more here, but how do you personally decide when to double down on an idea versus when to call it a distraction and cut it?
Yeah. So we generally look at a revenue threshold because that's just a shocking metric to many small businesses. We generally say if you're not generating $10 million doing your one thing, you haven't arrived yet, you're not good enough yet. For most businesses, that's about 0.001% of a market cap. So it's nothing. Yet most businesses said, oh, we're doing $300,000 in revenue. I should diversify and do more things. And it starts diluting you. It's all about the efficiency game. That's where we focus. The second thing is we just do diagnostics with AI. It's so easy now. Just look at the customer base, what they're consuming, what's the profitability per product, and we just focus in on those few things. I think businesses pursue diversification too quickly because we hear if you're diversified, you're safe, you're protected, but it also stalls growth.
Do you think entrepreneurs should ever have multiple businesses before they do $10 million in revenue?
If I say no, I'm a hypocrite. So I have many businesses that aren't doing $10 million, but I don't run them. So I think people misunderstand what a business owner is. In fact, when people ask me, what do you do? In addition to author, I don't say I'm an entrepreneur, even though it's my favorite word, because entrepreneurs become so bastardized. There's pundits that say, oh, entrepreneurship's hustle and grind. It's, work your ass off. That is not what entrepreneurship is. You were sharing something that I hope people took notes down. 6%, you said, of the world population runs a business. I'll give you the data behind this because I'm really into the numbers. 17% of the population ever attempts to start a business. So if you think about kindergarten and the 20 kids in your class, 17, 3 kids, maybe 4 kids ever attempt to start a business. 20% ever start a business and after 5 years are doing it on a profitable, sustainable basis. That's 3%. So the 6% who are running a business, half of them are actually pulling it off after 5 years. And that's how the math works. Which means if you ever thought about who was the weirdo in your kindergarten class, it was you. You're a weirdo. For some messed up part of your mind's like, oh, I can start a business and make money. The number one job of an entrepreneur is not to do the job. The number one job of an entrepreneur is to create jobs for the other kids in your class. 19 kids in your kindergarten class want good jobs with good companies to live a good life with just good experiences. If you are doing the work in your business, you're failing the responsibility of an entrepreneur. Your job, my job, our job is to create jobs for the other 97% of the global population. Yet most entrepreneurs are doing the work. So, let me just get off my soapbox for a second. I don't call myself an entrepreneur anymore because unfortunately, we're told that means to work in our business. I call myself a shareholder because I also own public stock and I'm a shareholder in my business. And when someone says, what are you? I say I'm a shareholder of small business. They're like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, I own the stock. I share in the profit and I give strategic direction. I vote, but I don't do any of the work in the business. So for every one of the companies, we have a president, we have a C-suite, if you will, and these are some small businesses. A C-suite could be like 6 people in the entire company, but I am not in the business doing the work.
So cool. Let's talk about beacons. So you referenced a study about football fields and blindfolds, but how do you stay on course in a business and not get distracted?
So the study, this is my book actually called Fix This Next. What I found is most entrepreneurs are reactionary. And there was a study of a woman named Amanda Eller from the state of Hawaii back maybe 10 years ago. And it's a common story. She was just a unique global phenomena. She went for a hike on a path she always does. Halfway through a hike, it was like a 5-mile hike, she sees a fallen tree and she decides to sit down and meditate. She comes out of her meditation, she picks a path, the key variable being a path, starts walking. She's like, oh God, I'm disoriented, I'm not in the right spot. 17 days later, she's found clinging to life by a rescue crew. What's interesting about the story is she was a half mile from her car. She started walking in circles. Without a beacon, this happens over and over, people get lost. In this German study, they took people on a football field and they put like a sleep mask on them and said, find your way across. No one could do it. And it wasn't the long way, it was the distance like halfway across the field, which is only 50 yards, and they couldn't do it. Most entrepreneurs operate their business this way. It's very reactionary. It's like, oh, my instinct says go here, my instinct says go there, and we're totally blinded. So we have to pick a beacon of what the business needs. The typical beacon is this. The most common missed part in businesses is, are you profitable on a daily basis? At the end of today, Saturday, are you gonna walk out of here and your business made more money than it spent? And tomorrow, does it make more money than it spent? Most entrepreneurs don't focus on that at all. They simply say, I need to sell more. And they actually dig a hole further. So the number one beacon is sustainable daily profitability. The second beacon after that, once you nail your profitability, you can use profit first to do that. Number 2 is efficiency. And I'll give you the hack to efficiency that most people don't do. Most people say, oh, I gotta learn how to delegate. Question, who here has a personal assistant? Raise your hand, live audience. Okay, hands down. Hands down. Who does not have a personal assistant? Okay, keep your hands up. You are the personal assistant. If your hand is up right now. It is the biggest flaw in small business. Everyone that just raised your hand, hire a personal assistant stat. And they don't have to be full-time. They can work 1 hour a month. And it's not to have someone doing work for you. It's so you can learn how to delegate to other people. It is the biggest weakness most entrepreneurs have, is the ability to delegate. Second tip, most people delegate the wrong thing. What don't I like to do? I don't like doing this, I'm gonna delegate it. Wrong. What do you love to do so much you'll never give it up? Delegate that. Because when you can delegate your passion, you'll learn to delegate the entirety of your business.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, Zach, you know what one of the first things we do in the boardroom is, which is yell at you guys to get VAs, right? He's nodding his head, yes. And that is because you're right. Otherwise, that means you do not value your time more than minimum wage offshore labor. And like, you got to look at yourself in the face and think about that for a second. You are saying your time is not worth more than a couple of dollars per hour. And if that is true, then are you really a business owner? And I think the answer to that is no, you're an employee. You're still in employee status. And one of the first things we do in our groups is say, let's offload some of these. Let's kill the zombies, let's cut the weight, and let's offload the things that you should never be doing in the first place. And now there are incredible systems to do that. And and we'll talk about that later today as well, as Zach knows. Okay, I want to talk about, let's talk about profit first. Many people think revenue minus expenses equal profit, and profit is the last part of the equation in business. You famously argue the opposite. Let's talk about what the profit first framework is.
So after struggling with my own finances, I looked at my businesses historically, and while they grew, and I did sell 2 businesses, they were never profitable. And so they were strategic acquisitions. I was lucky to get out. Most people will never sell their business. So I ran the data. There was a study from the SBA in conjunction with a major bank. They identified 83% of small businesses in the US. There's 36 million of us now. Under 25 million in revenue, you're considered a small business. So it's probably the majority of this room. 83% of us are surviving check by check. And probably everyone in this room, in part, started your business for financial freedom. So I'm like, oh, we started a business for financial freedom, but no one pulls it off. What's wrong with us? And then I was looking at the formula one day. I said, holy crap, that formula is wrong. It makes logical sense. Sales or revenue, you subtract expenses, what's left over is profit. Totally makes sense. It does not make behavioral sense. It is human nature. What comes first gets done. What comes last gets ignored. The manana syndrome. We are told profit comes last. It's the bottom line last. It's the year end last. It's all last. And so most business owners, and how I ran my business, I'd wait till the end of the year. I'm like, shucks. I wouldn't use the word shucks, but your mom's here. I'm like, shucks. I could never swear in front of my own mom, but I'm F-bombing here. I would go, shucks, I don't have any profitability. Maybe next year. And that was the fundamental flaw. Once I took my profit first, I started becoming profitable every day. It's the pay yourself first principle applied to business. And this goes back to biblical times. It's like nothing new. In the Bible, they talk about tithing and the necessity of putting money aside. It's been modernized in tons of personal finances. We're told to have a 401k, pay yourself first. And yet in a business, we don't do it. So it's literally that simple. And it ain't a shell game. It leverages, into behavioral principles, a thing called Parkinson's law. Parkinson states that our demand for a resource expands as the resource expands. The more time you have to do something, the longer it'll take. The more cookies that are served as a dessert, the more you're gonna eat. Guilty. And the more money you make in your business, the more you will spend. As your revenue goes like this over time, I bet your expenses increase at the uncanny same rate. It's because how we're behaviorally wired. So what we're gonna do is starting today, every time sales comes in, like today, take a percentage. You wanna have 10% bottom line? Take 10%. 20, great, take 20%. Take that profit, hide it from your business, and now your business tells you what's available to run your business. What I say is profit first doesn't fix your business, it tells you what needs to be fixed within your business. Because if you want that profit number, it'll tell you you don't have enough, your prices are wrong, you gotta fix your margins, inefficient, over costs, all that stuff.
I love that. We'll do an activity, I think, later today that talks about, we like to have people actually think about where in your business can you cut costs immediately. Yeah. It's like, because it's hard to make new sales, right? You're like, yeah, I'd love to go right now, close a bunch of new business, go out there, execute on it. Can be hard.
Yeah.
You don't always have control over that immediately, but somewhere in your business is sitting some cash. And so we have a process, Carter's really good at this, where we go through and analyze again and again, where in your business do you have hidden money? And it's not the sexiest of things, because nobody's like, I saved $1,000 today.
Yeah.
You're like, I closed a bunch of new clients. That's way sexier. Yeah. Who gets paid the most? Salespeople. Who gets paid the least? Accountants. And yet, accountants are more consistent. And so I really like this.
That's brilliant. There's a little hack you can do.
Let's do it.
Get a credit card, a new credit card. This sounds crazy, for your business. You can do it in your personal finances too. Move all your subscriptions to that one card and get paper statements. I did my personal finances. I'm like, I probably spend, a couple $100 maybe on subscriptions. Holy crap, I spent 500. I got like the Hydro system. I got the Peloton. I've got Netflix. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm not using half this stuff. You got to make it visceral, and you got to make it conscious as opposed to subconscious. In your business, set up a dedicated card just for your subscriptions, and you'll see how much you're spending. It's the first way to get control of that stuff.
I love that. Yeah, and I want to open it up from questions here at the end, so think about it for a second. Have your questions kind of ready. The other thing I think we don't think about enough as business owners is investing in ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds a little cheesy because it's so much easier to say, I invested in the business here. I hired a new person. But I've found that if we don't become better, our business never gets better. And so I'm curious, you've been in the sort of educational business for a long time. Do you still have coaches and mentors? Yeah. How do you think about investing in yourself as the entrepreneur and getting better? Is that important to you?
Yeah, so wickedly important, surprise. What I do is identified what is the role that I enjoy the most, meaning gives me the most joy. But first I had to eradicate myself from doing it. So let me explain. I get the most joy from being a spokesperson for my brand, okay? I realize that requires a lot of public speaking. And I realize if I'm the only person doing it, I become the linchpin for my business. So first I educated about 50 people on speaking on Profit First. In fact, there's like 3 Profit First keynotes going on today, and I'm not doing any of them. So that's the first thing. So I'm not necessary. Then I said, okay, well, I own the business and I want to do what gives me joy. I'm not going to sit on the beach and stuff. So I'm going to reinsert myself and I want to be the best spokesperson I can. So I go to improv classes. I study comedy. I look at what do my contemporaries do? And most people sit behind a dais and like, I'm like, that's the one thing I can't do. I have to be different. So I study theatrics, performance, all those things constantly. I have a speaking coach who comes to my events and critiques me, sometimes live. Like he'll be doing signals. He'll sit in the front row. He's like, doing, like we have these hand signals. Like, oh gosh, hands out of your pocket. Named John Bates. So I very much invest in that. I think for any of us, this is human nature. We can be super elite at very few things, but pick that thing and then you become the Michael Phelps or the Jimmy Mickeldorf of your category.
Well, it's
now you all know Jimmy Mickeldorf.
No, poor Jimmy.
Dude,
I wonder
poor
where
Jimmy.
he is today.
I know.
You know.
He's like 20 years old now. He's never had a girlfriend as a result because of me.
I love that. Thank you. I think a lot of times we need to give ourselves permission to spend time getting better because it feels like there's too many things to do every single day, and it might even feel like a little bit of a luxury. And I'm a big believer that, if we don't spend money becoming the best CEO we can be, then how can we hire the best talent who can then be talking on other stages, who can then be growing the business? Like, you cannot attract what you are not. And so I think you have to keep becoming better if you want to attract better people. Okay, yes. I have one last question that I'm going to open it up for you guys. You often talk about building a business that runs without you. What's the first system every owner should put in place?
We do with every business we invest in. We immediately schedule a 4-week vacation for the business owner within 1 year of today. And I challenge you right now, in your calendar, put a 4-week vacation. That's 1 month away from the office. Tell your loved one you're going on vacation with them, perhaps. Tell your kids. They're the ultimate accountability mechanism. And if the thought of that gives you a heart attack, and when most business owners it does, that's the first indicator we do not have a systemized business. If you can extract yourself from a business for 4 consecutive weeks, we actually turn off your email, full shutdown. It changes the mindset from